Just as the flame arrives in South Korea, so does our Scott Russell, who once again will be the primetime host for CBC's Olympic coverage. He joins me now from Seoul. It's great to see you, Scott. Let's pick up on what I was just talking about there. The North Korean threat is obviously the #1 issue right now for these games. Are you there seeing any obvious security presence now?
Well, Heather, as you mentioned in that piece about security, Pyeongchang, 80 kilometers away from the North Korean border, it's a heavily security type of border. And yes, some countries have expressed concerns, France, Germany, Austria. But the IOC just last week in Geneva gave its full blessing to the games. But we're going to see increased security. Just to get into this ceremony, when the flame arrives from Greece today, we had to itemize by serial number every piece of equipment that we brought onto the tarmac of this airport. And also, we were submitted to a full body search. So that's something that we're going to have to get used to. The South Korean officials have said there's no question. With regard to these games, the security will be tight, maybe the tightest we've ever seen.
Obviously, all sorts of media there for the start of the torch relay, Scott. And as you know, it's such an important moment for the host country. Really helps create the buzz. So what's your read on the atmosphere there 100 days out?
Do you know what, Heather? South Korea has waited for these winter games a long time. Pyeongchang lost in bidding for the 2010 games to Vancouver very narrowly, to Sochi for the 2014 games very narrowly. They want to become a winter sports nation. The legacy of the 1988 Summer Olympics here in Seoul is still very strong. We visited the Olympic Park yesterday. There's a great reverence for the Olympic Games and the part that the Olympics played in South Korea's emergence internationally. So yes, there is a buzz about these Olympic Winter Games, and they're very much hoping that the Games will make South Korea a winter sport powerhouse. The first person who will take that flame, ignite the little cauldron here at the airport, and begin the torch relay is the Olympic champion figure skater Yoona Kim. She's considered a national treasure here. She's immensely popular, and I think the games are going to be immensely popular in this country.
Well, we've certainly been hearing a lot from officials about how all the facilities and all the venues are set already. Are there any concerns about readiness, Scott?
You know, Heather, we talk about this before every Olympic Games, and we saw the results of it in Rio. We saw it in Athens in 2004. That's one area where there isn't much of a concern. The venues are up and ready to go in both the mountain and coastal clusters. They're very close together. They've been tested out. Many world championships have been held there. The Canadian luge athletes are here right now training on the sliding track. It's all ready to go. They're beautiful venues, with the exception of curling. They're brand new, and as I said, the construction is all complete. And here's the other thing. There's a high-speed rail line which will connect the capital of Seoul to the Pyeongchang region. It will take an hour and a half to get there. That train is already built, it's been tested, and it will be fully online by the beginning of December. No concerns right now about readiness.
Good news there, Scott. Okay, you mentioned luge. Let's talk more about sports. We know Canada had such a strong performance in Sochi in 2014. How's the team shaping up this time?
I think the team has very high hopes based on World Championship results last season. Canada's right near the top. They're going to send about 240 athletes. That will be the biggest contingent to a Winter Games outside of Canada. They won 25 medals in Sochi, 10 of them gold. There are 4 new sports coming to these games: snowboarding, big air, mixed doubles, curling, team alpine, and mass start speed skating. Canadians are all at the top in all 4 of those sports. Returning veterans, Tessa Virtue, Scott Moyer in the ice dance, Alex Harvey, the great cross-country skier, Mark McMorris in snowboarding, the hockey teams, both men's and women's in the curling. Canada's got a tremendous upside at these games, Heather. They could surpass 25 medals.
Okay, so that sounds exciting, but you mentioned hockey, and that is really the big disappointment for many. There will be no NHL players in these Olympic Games. So what does that mean for Olympic hockey?
I think it's disappointing to many that the National Hockey League players will not be here. That said, there will be full hockey tournaments for both the men and the women at these Olympic Games. Russia has the advantage on the men's side. Many of their players who currently play in the KHL, their professional league, will give them an advantage because they're playing at a high level. The Canadians are going to have to rely on perhaps players playing in Europe and also some junior players, some minor pros. So that will be a bit of a difficulty. But there'll be a fuller emphasis on women's hockey at these games. And hey, Heather, you put anybody in a Canadian uniform, they're going to cheer for them at the Olympic Games.
And the hockey players give them great reason to cheer. Scott, thank you so much for tonight. We will see you again from there in February. Our Scott Russell.